Welcome to the Real Estate Prosperity Podcast. My name is Robert Metz, and I'm the author of the just published book entitled Real Estate Prosperity. My book is presently available in both e-form and hard copy at www.realestateprosperityllc.com. This is the seventh and the final podcast in a series detailing the 28 basic methods by which you can finance or control your purchase of a piece of real estate, whether it's a property in foreclosure, a bank-owned property, a multiple listed property, an FSBO, mainly a for sale by owner property, any type of transaction. 28 essential categories of financing or controlling the purchase. Again, you do not have to close to make money on the deal. You can control the deal. So when we say financing or control, 6 of one, half a dozen of another, however you want to term it, you want to control that deal, you want to do something with it, maximize its potential and do something. And a lot of times you can only control the property if you don't have the necessary credit and or dollars to finance it or to pay all cash. In terms of the 28 methods to finance or control, we just discussed PUC, buying, controlling as purchase or under contract, sometimes called the deposit money method of flipping, basically controlling a property with a deposit, flipping the contract, flipping the property. Again, I go into great detail in my book on this method and all of its ramifications and parameters. In the last 6 podcasts that we just finished, we touch on it peripherally. Only so much detail can be discussed in a podcast. Along the lines of the PUC method is what you might call the pure option method. Not simply controlling a property with a deposit and a contract that you're going to close by a certain date, etc., etc. But the option itself can stand on its own 2 feet as an instrument, as a document. The option can be an independent contract, or it can even be part of a lease or some other ongoing relationship or document. And the option is basically the purchasing of a right. Certain considerations. Sometimes you see an option that's purchased for $1. You can have an option to buy a piece of real estate on certain terms and conditions that you could pay any amount of money for. It could be $1,000, it could be $10,000, $20,000, $1 million. It could be $1. Whatever the traffic is, whatever the deal is, an option is buying a right. You have option contracts in the commodity markets, in gold and silver. You have options in stocks and bonds and other financial instruments. An option is exactly what it says, whether it applies to real estate or any other type of purchase or financial transaction or anything in life. You have a choice. When you buy an option, you have an agreement that should set forth the terms. It says, you are buying this right to buy this property from so-and-so for so much consideration, for so many dollars, on certain terms. You have a date by which you have to exercise your option if you are going to follow through. It should set forth the terms that you're going to buy the property on, price, conditions. It should have a lot of the terms that will be repeated in a purchase agreement, detailed tenancies, title issues, if you're going to be able to get financing, how long from your exercise of the option in which you have to close. It's not a real estate contract per se. You're not buying as a PUC with a deposit. You're just paying a certain sum of money to give you that right, that choice, that option to subsequently, if you want, execute an agreement along certain parameters set forth in the option to buy the real estate, to buy or control the property. And again, just like a contract for a purchase or under contract and many other financial instruments, having an assignability clause in your option, having the ability on certain conditions, ideally minimal conditions that can be met easily, having the opportunity to sell or to assign your option to somebody else, again, gives you the best of both worlds. and the maximum flexibility. You have the option for a nominal amount, hopefully, to purchase a property if you wish down the road. And at the same time, you can have the option within the option to sell that right, to sell that option contract or agreement to somebody else, and never go and close on the property yourself, and simply make your profit by having structured a nicely, smartly worded agreement, namely your option agreement, and maximize its potential, and sold that option, assigned that option to somebody else, and let them follow through on the deal. Or again, you can exercise the option and hopefully have a tremendous buy, or time may prove that the option is not so desirable. Markets may change, your position may change. You may get an option hoping to be in a financial position to exercise it down the road, and you may not get to that position. You may have an option that's not assignable, or that does not have the value that anybody wants to buy it from you, and you can get stuck. You can purchase an option to buy a property. You can wind up having the option expire, not exercising or profiting from it, not having sold or assigned it to a third party, and lost money on it. That's how business is, real estate and otherwise. But generally, a smartly worded option, sensibly gone into, can be very valuable, whether you're going to want to close on a property or whether you're going to be able to sell or assign the option to a third party. A right of first refusal, the final of the 28 methods that we're discussing at this point of being able to use to finance or control a deal, a purchase. The 28th method is sometimes referred to as a right of first refusal. Again, it's akin in a certain way to an option, but it's a distinct vehicle different than an option. Often a right of first refusal is built into a lease agreement for the benefit of the tenant. Other times it's again, like any other contract, option or otherwise, it's an independent, freestanding legal document, legal agreement that somebody purchases for consideration for certain dollars, a right of first refusal, meaning that if the owner of the property decides to sell the property to anybody at whatever time or within the time mentioned in the first refusal, that in a pre-designated format, subject to certain terms and conditions outlined in the first refusal, that owner has to notify the other party to the the right of first refusal, namely yourself, as to the terms and conditions of his proposed deal to some third party of that property, and he has to offer you the option, not literally the option, but the right, let's call it, to match that offer as designated and delineated in the terms of the first refusal. So if you have a first refusal to buy 2 Main Street on certain terms and conditions, or to match the terms and conditions of a bona fide offer of any other third party within a certain period of time by a certain date, and the owner of the property gets an offer to sell that property or markets that property and has a deal to sell it to a third party, before he can consummate that deal, before he can sign that contract and proceed, he has to present those documents to you, that deal he has to present to you, the owner of the right of the first refusal, so that you can either match that offer, match that deal, and take it, or reject it. So if you have a right of first refusal, again, whether it comes from a lease agreement or from some independent document unrelated to a lease agreement, you do not necessarily have the owner of the property tied up per se, but you have kind of a first crack at the property if he should desire to sell it, and if he should get a bona fide offer within the time frames and the parameters delineated, set forth in your first refusal. And again, this can be very valuable to a tenant. It can be very valuable to a non-tenant. But again, it's another method, an old method, but a novel method, a creative one, of being able to finance or control an interest in real estate and ownership a piece of real estate in a non-conventional way. Creative, yet old, but a very important vehicle in many cases. So, in a nutshell, you have to structure your deal. You have to structure your purchase based on real knowledge, not the nonsense fantasy knowledge that you see often in infomercials and on the internet, but real knowledge of real estate, right numbers, and a smartly worded and thus very valuable contract. You have to make your deal. You have to look for making your profit, getting something out of it, even when you cannot handle the deal entirely on your own. Not that you're going to be foolish and chase after deals that are totally unrealistic, throw money into forms of deposits or transaction costs around, and put them all at risk on fleeting, impossible possibilities, impractical possibilities. You have to be practical, but you have to try to see if you can make deals that you can do on your own 2 feet in the traditional way, or that you could do with other types of financing, other types, methods of financing to own, to control the real estate. There are many forms of holding, many methods to obtain an interest, literally and a proprietary interest, to gain, to get a foothold in property, to get in the door, to finance it, to control a deal, to get part of the deal, to make money in a deal. Traditional bank financing, an all-cash offer, important and convenient methods, but not necessarily the heart of the business. Those are the least of the methods in most cases. And a knowledge of the various methods to finance or control a deal, to get the property, to get part of the property, to get in the deal, to get part of the deal, is what can make or break your career in real estate. If you do not have the full money, if you do not have the credit, you do not get there by fantasy. It's not the get rich quick, the nonsense approaches that you often see, again, as I said before, on the internet, on the infomercials. It's not so simple, but it's not all that terribly complicated, and it's certainly not impossible either. The knowledge is key. Like they used to say, the knowledge is power. But you need to learn the business, and that is what I try to harp on in my book, and that is the only practical approach. Not the fantasy nonsense approaches, but practical, pragmatic knowledge and methodology. Learn the methods, learn how to proceed so that you can do deals and genuinely succeed in real estate.